Hey guys, what's up? It is week 358. Let's jump right into the reviews. And the first one up is a doozy. It's from Arrow Video, 1981. John Boorman, a classic here, and this is Excalibur. And I kind of regretting not covering some of the fantasy movies from the early 80s when I did the 80s. I mean, like, I didn't talk about this or Dragon Slayer, and they definitely had a huge influence on the kind of the horror of the early 80s. You look at, like, Italian imports like Conquest, and, you know, Sword to Sorcerer came out as well. So these movies that have horror in them are definitely inspired by a lot of this high fantasy stuff throughout the 80s and probably even the early 90s. But Excalibur here. So John Boorman, you know, did Point Blank. He directed Deliverance, which is probably his biggest film. I don't know, this or Deliverance. This is kind of the one they put everything into, I'd say. But pretty well-respected director. He had a flop with The Exorcist 2, which most people consider a mess of a film. But this is the Arthurian tale, you know, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, the Sword and the Stone, all that kind of stuff comes from kind of this ancient, you know, kind of legend stuff here, and it was adapted into several books, and this is kind of like a first attempt, or not a first attempt, I'm sure there's several, but to kind of take all these, you know, books and put them into one epic film. And John Boorman had tried to get this movie made forever. He at one point was toying with making, trying to get Lord of the Rings made, so it makes sense that this would kind of fit with, you know, that kind of idea in his head. And he said in the commentary he felt a great, you know, weight off of him when this film was done. It was a very hard film to make, and he felt like he was destined to make this. He had to make this his life's kind of work here. I thought this was fantastic. This was actually a first time watch for me. I had seen a lot of the sword and sorcery fantasy movies growing up, you know. Of course, I like stuff like Conan the Barbarian and Willow, and, you know, I'd seen Sword and the Sorcerer and tons of them, Beastmaster. So I've seen a lot of them, but for some reason I had not seen Excalibur, one of the first the kind of in this modern age. You know, there's those Russian fantasy movies. There's tons of fantasy throughout different times, and Jason Argonaut's Ray Harryhausen. But I feel like this kind of medieval fantasy style kind of epic thing we had a great push from Excalibur. So the cast is amazing, and it was it had a lot of, you know, United Kingdom actors, theater actors, first time role actors for actors that would become bigger actors here. Now the funny thing for me is people like King Arthur, the lead in the film, is an actor that I don't typically recognize. He's in a lot of theater work, and he died pretty young. Had a decent career, of course, but he's just an actor that didn't spring to me when I saw him, which it kind of worked for me, because if I would have, you know, oh, that's, you know, just an actor that I know very well, it might have taken over the role. But seeing this actor who is, you know, plays this character throughout all these ages was really a good choice in this actor, I think. And I think he did a fantastic job. I thought he was much more convincing middle-aged and older King Arthur, but he actually ended up being one of my favorite parts of the film. We also have Nicole Williamson, who is kind of an infamous actor in stuff like Venom, for all the horror fans out there, or thriller fans out there. And he's also in Return to Oz, Exorcist 3, so there's some Exorcist connections there. But Nicole Williamson was also a theater actor, and was known to be kind of a difficult, possibly alcoholic actor is what they say, possibly, but, you know, difficult actor. But he plays Merlin, and one of the finest roles in the film, if not the finest. But the cast also has Helen Mirren in one of her early film roles, in a fantastic role, is Morgana, classic character in literature and whatever history, if you will, you know, myths and whatnot. But we also have Patrick Stewart, Liam Neeson, just a slew of these really good actors, a bunch of other recognizable, fantastic actors here. And yeah, this story starts off with Gabriel Byrne. And he is this, I do tell the story of King Arthur in it, but, you know, he is this this kind of king that witnessed peace is made, but he witnesses this his enemies, his former enemies' wife, and he must have her. So he uses Merlin to do a magic kind of ordeal and sneak into the fog and play a trick on her, and kind of rapes this woman. She doesn't know it's actually Gabriel Byrne, but rapes the woman, and the offspring was promised to Merlin. So Merlin's going to raise this boy, pull the strings of this boy, and get him to be king to rule the land. And if you know, the king is doing well, and the people of the land prospers, but when the king is sour, the world, you know, around will prosper. So this movie is gorgeous to look at, and this is going to sound really weird. If there's one way I could kind of talk about this, it's like grounded fantasy. There is a world, there are rules, but a lot of it feels incredibly real. The fights feel kind of messy in the best way. They mentioned that Boorman would continue filming after, you know, the cut, and after the choreographed stuff was done, and want them to keep going in kind of dangerous fashion. Patrick Stewart mentioned that in the special features too, kind of catch extra things. But Wagner is part of the score along with other classical music, which is perfect for this. It makes this giant epic thing and uses songs that we already have embedded in our minds and souls and everything like that to play throughout this movie. So you hear these music and whatnot, and these big themes and everything, and it comes all together. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I thought the performances were great. I thought it was incredibly touching as well, and one of my most gorgeous kind of fantasy movies I've ever seen. One of my favorite fantasy epics I've ever seen. I probably put this on the top for me. It's just it's hard for anything to be better. I like the kind of grounded realism. I like the characters. I love Lancelot and the relationship between kind of the love triangle. And there's moments in this movie that are incredibly emotional when King Arthur goes to his his former love and talks to her, and she has kept Excalibur for him. It's just this touching moment, and Lancelot I love as well. And there's a point when I was actually bitter at the characters, but it's part of the legend, and everybody tends to redeem themselves in glorious fashion. I think that Helen Mirren is a perfect villain. I think that Nicole Williamson is also fantastic. It looks great in 4K, sounds great. I think it's only a 5.1 mix, but very impressed with this release from Arrow Video. It has tons of features on here. I did listen to pretty much everything on here, so let's go down here. We have a brand new commentary by Brian Hoyle, author of The Cinema of John Boorman. This one's really good and packed with a lot of information and whatnot. Brand new audio commentary by filmmaker David Kitteridge, director of Boorman and the Devil. This also is filled with a decent amount of information, but it's a little bit more, there's some dead noise, dead, like he doesn't fill in as much as the other guy, but there's just so much to, it's a 2 hour and 20 minute commentary, so there's good information to be had though, for sure. And then we have archive commentary by John Boorman, who seems to have a lot of regrets. He says, I wish I would have done this different and whatnot. Never ending, kind of always a filmmaker there. The Making of Excalibur, Myth into Movie, and never before released 48-minute documentary directed by Neil Jordan during the production of Excalibur. That's really interesting because obviously Neil Jordan was a pretty prolific director himself with Company of Wolves and The Crying Game and Interview with the Vampire. Yeah, I think he did that one as well, and Byzantium. Good strong director, and it's crazy that he was on this set. And there's an interview with him as well where he talks about how Boorman kind of got him his start in filmmaking because he was a writer before and he was never going to have that chance being a Scotsman. And then we have To Be a Knight and Follow a King, a newly filmed interview with director John Boorman and actor Charlie Boorman. That's Boorman's son. And John Boorman's still alive at 92. His kid actually plays in the movie as the offspring, the forced offspring of King Arthur and Helen Mirren's incestuous love child. And not love child, hate child, I would say. But that's interesting as well. When Death Was a Dream, a newly filmed interview with creative assistant Neil Jordan. That was great to watch on there because Neil Jordan, again, a great filmmaker himself. The Charm of Making, the newly filmed interview with production designer Anthony Pratt. If I'm not mistaken, this one is quite long, and he talks about his career as a whole. Confessions of a Professional Pain in the Ass, newly filmed interview with second unit director Peter MacDonald. Maybe I'm mixing these two up, but there was a lot to guys kind of swallow here. Hours and hours of stuff. Anam Kara, a new featurette on the working friendship of John Boorman and co-writer Rossip Pallenberg, featuring a newly filmed interview with Pallenberg. Talk about their career working together and have their fallouts. Divided Nature, a brand new featurette by film historians Howard S. Berger and Kevin Marr. Good stuff as well. And then the final disc here, we have the 120-minute version of the film. The original version of the film is 2 hours and 20 minutes, so this is a TV version that's 2 hours. And then we have Excalibur Behind the Movie, a 50-minute retrospective documentary in which cast and crew look back on the making of the film. And this includes people like Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart and the guy who plays Percival. All these kind of people are popping up here, in Helen Mirren, so that's really great to see. Unfortunately, a big chunk of this cast is past. King Arthur, Nicole Williamson. A lot of people have died, unfortunately, but just tons of great characters and these really emotional, touching, and the thing about Boorman is he's just a director who comes across as just without trying to be a masculine director. It doesn't seem facetious or over the top or try too hard. It just naturally comes to him, it seems, but it's also not, it's realistically masculine, just it's normal masculine kind of behavior for a movie, if that makes any sense to anyone. Sometimes you see these movies where you can just tell the guy's trying to make up for something that is not there and whatnot. But love this movie. Great release here, the booklet as well. Just a gorgeous release for a gorgeous film. Okay, we have an oddball here from MVD Rewind Collection, and this is Force 5 from 1985. Some people list 81, sorry. Some people list this as a slasher film occasionally, and I'm like, what is going on here? Obviously, we've not seen Force 5 by the director Robert Clouse, who did Deadly Eyes from 82, fun killer rat film, and he also directed Game of Death and I think Enter the Dragon, the Bruce Lee movies, and he also did Gymkata, which I feel, I've never seen Gymkata, but I feel like there's some elements that kind of correlate with Force 5. Force 5 is a really wacky, bizarre movie here. So it stars Joe Louis, who trained under Bruce Lee. It stars a bunch of real-life martial artists, the weapons specialist. The trailer is actually really fun. It's like 5 of the most deadly martial art artists, and it goes through this whole speech and everything like that. But even though there is technically 6 people, and one of them is not really a martial arts artist, she's like just a woman, and then the trailer, they're like, and she has everything else. It's such an exploitation trailer, classic kind of stuff like that. But this is kind of a Jonestown story. What if Jonestown was more into drugs and guns, and so you got like, what's the one, there's so many cults, Waco, or all those different places where they had these cults, Branch Davidians and whatever. But so it's like Jonestown, but if they were into guns and drugs, and everybody was a martial arts expert. So that's pretty much what goes on here. Senator's daughter disappears in this kind of cult, and they're like taking everybody's money and whatnot. It's led by this, I believe, Korean kind of martial arts expert, and he's crooked, but seems very, Jesus-like and religious and great on the exterior, but in the interior, he's a gun smuggler, drug smuggler, and whatnot, and murderer, and he uses a bowl. If that makes any sense to anybody. If you see it, it will. So, Joe Louis and a group of martial artists kind of snuck in there, including Benny the Jet, another famous martial artist who pops up, and, some Hong Kong movies doing great stunts and whatnot. But, so these guys end up infiltrating this place, and they're there with a senator trying to figure out what's going on. And, of course, they uncover the secret, and a bunch of fight scenes ensue. Some fight scenes, some fun fight scenes, some wacky fight scenes. Overall, Force 5 is decent, cheesy, kind of fun. There's only one special feature on the movie here. And this is actually an interview with Joe Louis, and this is done by Banana Man himself, Bill Olson, and it's pretty funny. It is, archival interview, 50 minutes here. There's also these strange interviews with Benny the Jet that are less about the movie and more about like his training and stuff. He seems like a cool guy, expert of course. But the Joe Louis stuff is Bill Olson's over interviewing him. He keeps interrupting him, and at the very beginning, Joe Louis is like, "You gotta let me talk. You gotta let me talk." And I was like, "Oh, I can see what's happening here." But he kind of lightened up, and you could tell they had some sort of camaraderie and funny back and forth and stuff like that. It's a very bizarre interview. He talks a lot about Bruce Lee, and it seems like it never got post-edited after this and the interruptions and whatnot. But overall, I think this is fun, kind of cheesy, everything you kind of would expect from a it actually feels more like a 70s movie. But you get the picture here, Force 5. Watch the trailer and decide after that. Okay, we're moving on to the second film in the Wicked Games, 3 films by Robert Hossein, and this is Nude in a White Car. I believe this is his second directed film after the first one in the set, Wicked Go to Hell, and this also stars him. He's a very good actor, too. A lot of times you see the lead star, the director and the star, and you're like, oh, this is just not going to end up very well, but sometimes it works out, and this one did. This is based off a novel, and Tim Lucas goes in depth about the differences between the novel and the film, and the commentary, again, a good Tim Lucas commentary. And so, this is a really interesting one. Really good. Oop, knocking movies over here. This is what happens when you're surrounded by cinema and media and whatnot. But, this is an interesting one where Robert Hossein is this ex kind of like, I guess, TV personality, radio personality guy who did poetry and whatnot. We don't know that in the beginning. And this woman kind of, at night, calls him over in this car and says, "Hey, come here." And her face is kind of darkened by the shadows, and she sleeps with him. And then he's kind of more interested in everything. And there's nudity early on in mid-50s movie, kind of, maybe late 50s, kind of early for that. But French cinema, all bets, all kind of things are off limits there. Not on limits there. Yeah, whatever. You guys get it. All bets are off. That's the word I'm looking for. There we go. But, and he wants to talk to her, see her face, and she pulls a gun on him, makes him get out, tries to run him down. He actually tracks the license plate and is a little clever going to the police and says this car, had a hit and run, yada, yada, yada. So he goes there. and he finds that this mansion has two beautiful blonde women there. One of them is a little older, and one of them is paralyzed in a wheelchair. And there's a great little featurette on here that talks about this. I can't remember if it's the featurette or the Tim Lucas commentary, but they mentioned something that says, he starts to get interested in both of them and involved in both of them. And the one in the wheelchair is, very manipulative and deceitful and whatnot. And she has this long history of possibly doing this kind of stuff. And the other sister seems incredibly nice and sweet, and they start a relationship, and he's going to work at one of their stores for them and run the store, so it complicates everything. And he's down on his luck and all these things of that nature. The book apparently has a little bit more backstory on him. But what happens is there's this great line in the featurette where they say, the one seemed mentally incapable of doing such a thing, and the other one was physically incapable. So he's kind of torn on which one was the woman in the beginning because he never got a good look. And as the audience, you're kind of back and forth the entire movie until the final reveal. And it seems like the book was possibly a darker ending, but I think this ending is fitting. I think this is well acted. I think this is suspenseful. I have no complaints. The acting is great. Actually was married to, I believe, the woman who plays the paralyzed lady at one point. And they have this nice little featurette talking about that. I can't remember where all the information comes from, but they actually had a relationship and they had a falling out and whatnot at one point. And it's a nice little interesting story here. But as far as the special features are concerned, the special features are mixed up on on this for Nude in a White Car and Wicked Go to Hell. We have audio commentary by Tim Lucas, good stuff. Behind the Marked Eyes, a cinematic stare of Robert Hossein, newly created featurette by Howard S. Berger, Hossein and his work, 27 minutes. Interview with actor Marina Valdi, evolution of the femme fatale in classic French cinema, a video essay by critic Sam Deacon, 17 minutes. That's good stuff too. She talks about the history of all this kind of stuff in that nature. And, I like film noir and femme fatales and stuff like that, but I'm not the most versed in this kind of stuff. But I do watch a lot of French cinema, I guess, once you put it that way. And I always tend to enjoy it, especially the older stuff. Really good stuff here. And I tend to almost enjoy all, 50s and 60s films in general. And then we have a limited edition booklet featuring new writings by Walter Cha and newly translated archival writing by Lucas Balbo. And then we got the last one in here, The Taste of Violence. Yes. So far, really good set so far. I think I'll pick Wicked Go to Hell over Nude in a White Car, but I don't know. I mean, I think, they're both great ideas. They're relatively equal. Both look fantastic too. Glorious black and white, really good looking films, interesting films, good locations, and just well done scripts. Okay, we're going to hop into this one from Visual Vengeance, which is a wild label. They release a lot of stuff I love, a lot of stuff I'm indifferent to, and a lot of stuff I don't particularly like, but all of it I'm definitely interested in seeing. So we have Date with a Vampire, and this one I think was made in 2000, made in 99, released in 2000, and this is early digital stuff here. And the director actually did a movie, I can't remember, early 90s called Night Owl with John Leguizamo, which is kind of I think it's like a New York vampire black and white film, which I did cover on here. Pretty interesting film, maybe has a little queer interest kind of to it, if I remember correctly here. But so I was like, oh, this is kind of very interesting. Date with a Vampire is doing a kind of do-it-yourself, low budget one here. This also comes with a short, Blood Craving. So let's talk about Date with the Vampire first and foremost. It's an hour long, and this is what you would call a movie that's made kind of just for the video store rental rack or like HBO or something like that, but incredibly cheap. So I don't know if it ever made it on the HBO streaming. There wasn't very many reviews of it anywhere at all, and I'm not sure that many people have seen this movie, to be honest. But the acting is, of course, it's not great, to be honest. At the end, there is a performance by Joe, what's the actor? He's a bunch of stuff. Joe Zazzo, who's done a bunch of movies, and him as the vampire is pretty decent, pretty solid. And that's when the movie kind of picks up in the last 10 minutes when we have like this vampire that's all like kind of muted out and stuff, monstered out in kind of the basement here. So this is written by Kevin Lindenmuth, who actually directed Vampires and Other Stereotypes, which is a really ambitious, low-budget vampire flick, which I do kind of recommend seeing. I think they put that out as well, and I think that it's better than this movie. And although if I don't love that movie, I think that one has more ambitious feelings here. So this one is just like made to be kind of your generic vampire kind of sex softcore thing. Most of the movie is softcore sex. There's a lot of kind of macho guys shirtless having sex with what would be a vampire woman, groping her breasts and all that kind of stuff. And that is a huge runtime in the movie. It's kind of like a Pinky movie, right? A Pinky, a Nikatsu erotic film, but it doesn't have like the good cinematography or the great acting or the great scores and the really top-notch filmmaking and decent story to go along with the kind of softcoreness. I mean, so if you're looking for this movie, like, this would be a perfect movie to watch on HBO late at night or rent when you're very young. But the idea that, you know, we have the internet now and all this stuff is so, you know, easy to get at somebody's fingertips, it kind of almost defeats the purpose of Date with a Vampire, but kind of looking at it as, I guess, you know, a staple or a time stamp of what was being made in the low budget world there. But I can't say too many positive things about this movie, but it is very short, and there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of nudity, if that's what you're interested in, including, of course, the obligatory, you know, lesbian vampire sex scene, which you must have in these movies, apparently. They're always in there, right? Vampires have the bisexuality, and there should be bisexual sex scenes in a vampire movie, right, I guess? But yeah, so overall, you know, it's digital, it doesn't look fantastic, and I didn't love the movie. I just can't recommend it as a whole. There's a lot of features on here, so if you're interested in this time and the directors and stuff like that, maybe check that out. As far as Blood Craving, it's 30 minutes, and it's kind of more of the same. It was actually shot by Scooter McCrae, who's a director that did Shatter Dead and Black Eyed Susan and 16 Tongues, so some movies I really either love or like. Love Shatter Dead and love Black Eyed Susan. So it was shot by him on this digital, and it's just the format is very limited, right? Even some of the bigger movies at the time, or bigger low-budget movies that I love, even that format holds them back, I think, just to a certain extent. But overall, this one, I think it's a little less, effective as the other one. I think less happens in it, but I might also checked out. There's a huge kind of, huge info kind of talking exposition scene in a restaurant, which is a huge chunk of the movie. Overall, these really aren't for me. As far as the features are concerned, there is a slew of them. So if you are a fan of these, or you're interested in the director or any behind-the-scenes stuff, there's a ton of features to enjoy. We have a commentary with the director, Jeffrey Arsenault. I have trouble saying his name, Arsenault. Interview with the director, interview with screenwriter Kevin J. Lindenmuth, interview with actress Cynthia Kolovich, interview with basement vampire actor Joe Zazzo, and he is full of energy, full of information, seems like a genuinely smart, intelligent, movie-loving guy. Location manager Nathan Thompson, not to be confused with Nathaniel Thompson, Date with the Vampire Memories. He kind of shows the house where the movie was filmed. It's kind of a cool house for sure. Buckingham Manor location video with Nathan Thompson, image gallery, original trailer, bonus film Blood Craving, 2002, Blood Craving commentary with director, Blood Craving interview with director, Blood Craving image gallery, Blood Craving original first draft trailers, After Midnight trailer reel, Visual Vengeance trailers, stick your own VHS, sticker sets, all the kind of stuff that comes with these. And we also do have a commentary with the director. And, you know, he doesn't have all that much to say about the movie because I don't feel like there was that much, and it's been years since he's seen it. So it's an okay commentary. I like some of the interviews a little bit better, more straightforward. I would go with those. But overall, Date with a Vampire and Blood Craving, just not for me. It's just a hard sell on softcore, digital movies from the early 2000s for me. It's just kind of a no-go. I think the cover art and the presentation is pretty solid and everything like that. And I do really like Visual Vengeance. I think that they do, a lot of great stuff. I love seeing the Todd Sheets movies. I love seeing, like The Abomination, and their other one, Highway to Hell, coming out in a couple months, looks really interesting. So, I do like Visual Vengeance, and, a lot of these movies are the kind of stuff that I grew up watching. So I have an, affinity for the company and affinity for a lot of their releases. Unfortunately, Date with a Vampire is not one of them. Okay, this next one here is just one I checked out. I watched Send Help. And this was the only Sam Raimi horror film I had never seen. So I was like, man, it's time to fix this. Drag Me to Hell, 2009, Sam Raimi. I do not know why I did not see this. I must have just been incredibly busy during that time in my life. So I finally decided to watch it. I watched the director's cut. Now listen, I love Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi as a whole, if we include stuff like Darkman, Quick and the Dead, and A Simple Plan, is one of my favorite directors. And then his horror films like the Evil Dead films and stuff. I love that stuff. I'm a big fan of it. So, I must say that I was a tad disappointed with Drag Me to Hell. I know I probably should have saw this in 2009 and I'd feel a little different. The lead actress, she does a really good job in here. She's a strange character. I'm not sure how I feel about her character, and just like more so the decisions she makes, not her acting or whatnot. And we have Justin Long, and Justin Long is kind of almost getting to that point to be like kind of slight horror royalty. He always has really fun roles, and I just seem like Justin Long seems like a genuinely nice and cool guy. So here we go, Drag Me to Hell. I do like a lot of the aspects. I love half of this movie and don't care for the other half, if we put it that way. So visually, I think it looks fantastic. Some of the CGI is dated, but there's some, I guess the set designs and stuff is just gorgeous. Almost kind of like Del Toro stuff when we get to these big set piece rooms and all this stuff like that. You're like, oh, this is really gorgeous and really top-notch stuff here. I thought that they did that really well. And the overall story, I really like too. I think it's a great concept, right? Kind of a throwback here. So we have the movie's words and the interview's words. A gypsy woman coming to the bank, and we have this kind of farm girl who's, she's dating a guy who comes from a rich family in Justin Long, and she wants to move up the corporate ladder. Her boss is David Paymer, from stuff like Night of the Creeps. They small role in that, City Slicker stuff. David Paymer's in a million movies, but character actor, and she has to make this decision to turn this poor, gypsy woman down on like her third loan for her house. But she doesn't seem like necessarily the nicest lady either. She's like stealing candy behind her back, and she's very like cartoony kind of character. And she ends up turning her down in hopes that she'll get this raise. And the woman says, "You shame me," and curses her. Takes a button and curses her. And she just feels off. Bad things start to happen. She ends up going to a psychic, and it's an Indian psychic. And I thought that his kind of a character was interesting and different, and kind of a little refreshing in comparison to some of the characters that are played in that way. Not your standard. A lot of the stuff he's saying is standard, but he was played it a little bit different. And I actually enjoyed this guy, his character and actor. So basically, he tells you you're cursed, and he decides to help her. And as her life kind of melts down, and she has like these ridiculous nosebleeds. There is some crazy set piece moments, like a fight scene with the gypsy woman in the car, some repetitive kind of humor that Sam Raimi really likes to do, and gross out stuff, which he's infamous for, all the way back to the first Evil Dead, where there's points where I was squirming rewatching Evil Dead not too long ago, which is a movie I've seen dozens of times. But that the idea that he always kind of manages to put these gross out kind of things in there, and he still does it even in Send Help. He loves to watch the audience squirm, and he loves to torture his actors. So Drag Me to Hell is definitely a big movie where there's tons of torturing of the actors and tons of gross out stuff. And it was made originally a PG-13, but the unrated version, I still don't think it's like an R-rated movie or anything of that nature. But so I enjoy the performances. I think that they do 100% dedication. There's just some clunky script stuff, and the tone, I just don't get it. Some of the tone stuff with Sam Raimi works for me, and this one, it's just like a little bit more grounded than something like Army of Darkness. And it's kind of in the vein of Send Help, where it's a little goofy, but it's somewhat grounded. But this one, I just don't know. It just kind of crosses a certain path where I just don't really know where to put it. I like it. I don't love it. I'm a little disappointed with it. But there's like 3 moments where we get to spoilers when I just couldn't buy. And they kind of ruined it for me. First, this woman who, is a vegetarian, and she grew up on a farm. She has to sacrifice an animal. She kills her kitten. Like, bro, just go to the farm and grab a chicken real quick. Or go, to the pet store and grab some, like, lab mice or something. It's just so bizarre that she just immediately jumps to kill her cat. There's another scene where there's a fight scene between her and the cursed woman, the woman who cursed her, in the parking lot. And it's a brutal fight scene. There's tons of damage. And then they walk away and it's like, oh, we decided not to press charges. Like, there's no way that's happening. There's no way that charges are not pressed in this matter, because there's public damage everywhere. And then the final thing is the button, and we kind of make this character do something completely unrealistic and insane, just so we can get the big reveal at the end. And believe me, she drops the envelope with a button, and this button is her whole internal soul depends on this button. And what she does, she just picks up the envelope. Okay. No. In real life, if you're nervous or worried, you ever get something that you can't believe you have, how many times do you check you have it? Somebody hands you a bunch of cash and just check you have it. If you're in that kind of area, it's your eternal soul. It's not, that. But she just doesn't even look for the button. And I was like, I can't buy that. I appreciate kind of the dark ending and kind of a silly, weird movie. I can appreciate a lot of the stuff about Drag Me to Hell, but I just, overall, it didn't come together for me for those points, and it just drove me kind of mad. And I shouldn't be holding this to a serious standard, but these are like critical moments of plot for me that just don't work. Overall, like the movie, don't love it. Looked pretty good, sounded pretty good. We have 4K, release, both versions, theatrical and on the unrated. But as far as the features are concerned, which I really did enjoy, we have Pardon My Curse, making of Drag Me to Hell, extensive behind-the-scenes documentary featuring new and archival interviews with co-writer producer Ivan Raimi, actors is Alison Lohman, Dilip Rayo, and Lorna Raver, director of photography Peter Deming, production designer Steve Saglad, actress Christina Cordella, makeup effects artist Greg Nicotero, editor Bob Murawski, composer Christopher Young, and more. That's great stuff too, and having Christopher Young do the score was great. Bob Murawski's a fantastic editor, just tons of people talking about it. That was a great little featurette on here. New 4K scan, okay, yep. And then we have To Hell and Back interview with Lohman, Curses interview with Raver, Hitting All the Right Moves interview with Young, production video diaries featuring behind the scenes footage and interviews with Raimi, Lohman, Justin Long, and more. Vintage interviews. Justin Long's pretty silly as well. Funny guy, has a lot of charisma, enjoyable. I like the release. I like the movie. Maybe in time it'll grow to love it even more, but as it stands, I have wacky taste sometimes. I understand that. Sometimes I feel like I'm in line with everybody else, and then other times I'm that kind of a little crazy. I mean, most people have a little crazy taste. It's always the people that won't admit that they have a little off-center taste. Not every movie's made for everybody, but it's just people that just refuse to accept that they may like a bad movie here or there, or something that's not 100% perfect. But yeah. So I would recommend Dragman to Hell. You got to see it. I'm sure most people have seen it. It was kind of a huge blind spot for me, and I'm glad I checked it off, and I'll give it another spin. I probably will like it a little bit more, but yeah, it's still good, just not great. All right, guys, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
Like
What's what like?
screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime, loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel.
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead.
What are you doing?
Okay, this is kind of a different kind of horror film. I wouldn't really call it a horror film, but it's an '83. It's a thriller kind of coming of age psychological deal here, and this is a French one called The Wounded Man by Altered Innocence. Great for this label to pick this one up. Good label. Definitely more queer and gay oriented label here, but they do have stuff like this, which I would consider like a thriller horror film. They do put out a lot of great stuff. They also put out Knife Plus Heart, which is one of my favorites from a few years ago. But The Wounded Man. So this is an interesting flick for sure. I don't know how to explain this too. So this is like, have you ever seen something like Deep End from 1970? The kind of coming of age obsession movie. And this is kind of a gay obsession film, which is really just kind of disturbing, but also like aggravating in a lot of ways. So we have this character who's on they drop off their sister at a train station, and right away in the beginning you see that he has to follow around somebody. His sister's like, "You're always under my feet." Why? She's like, he wants to go visit her when she's gone. You don't understand. The parents seem to have an odd relationship, not necessarily the best relationship. The mom seems always worried and nervous, and the father seems relatively checked out a lot of the time. So you kind of see the family, and they're kind of on holiday, if my understanding here. It sort of seems like it, but I'm not necessarily sure exactly their living situation here, but they drop her off at the station and whatnot, and now they're staying in this, like, maybe this is actually their home. I never really could gather what the hell is happening here, but he becomes I think it possibly is their home, but it's just weird. It's a whole weird situation. But he ends up becoming infatuated. He sees this older gay man and they make eye contact. He doesn't know he's gay at first, but at the train station, and it seems to be this place for cruising, for gay hookups, all this kind of stuff like that. And this old guy, he starts to follow him, kind of keep his eyes on him, and it leads him to this kind of more handsome, rugged kind of guy, the same guy from the House with Yellow Carpet, the Italian kind of giallo stage play kind of style movie thing. And he's just got this dangerous character, but he's incredibly intrigued. And he's not only intrigued in the sexuality of him, he's intrigued by the violence, it seems, and all that kind of that nightlife, that violence, that excitement, that weird kind of a gay obsession that a lot of films kind of focus on. And they do it too in the coming of age films like Deep End and things like that. It's kind of a story like that where a character will get incredibly infatuated with another character, and they kind of come together in this kind of hellish kind of end for them. But what happens is he starts to follow him around, and at night he can't sleep, and he's leaving and walking the streets and getting involved with this gay kind of hustler kind of world of prostitution. And it does seem like this older guy kind of takes him under his wing, and at first he seems a little like he doesn't want anything to do with him, but there seems to be some sort of connection and everything like that. Maybe he reminds him of himself, maybe he actually does have an attraction to him, but for the most part this character doesn't necessarily seem fully homosexual, or possibly only does it gay for kind of pay deal here. And this older guy is also involved with the situation, kind of watching over them, and as it goes on, their relationship, you kind of understand a little bit more about this relationship and all these characters and strange nightlife kind of figures and these kind of nightclubs and all these other people they run into. And it's just kind of a weird look at this kind of stuff, the late night streets and the characters and the obsession. And it's a well acted film, a well directed film, good performances, hard performances to do, I would say. And of course this is going to end tragically. This is going to end on a really dark note, and I think it's overall a really solid film. The Wounded Man I would recommend, well shot mostly predominantly at night, and it looks really gorgeous. But as far as the features, there are a slew. The Wounded Man and the Paradox of Queer Visibility, video essay by Robert Payne, and I can't remember, this, he kind of goes over, this, I'm kind of mixing both of them to do. He kind of talks about like the AIDS epidemic and stuff, and this being a little before that, and how how they made queer movies and what they were at the time, how this is a little bit different than, kind of its contemporaries and whatnot. Out of the Shadows, Criminalization of Sex Work, and The Wounded Man, a video essay by Tom Boyle. And this is actually done by an Australian sex worker, so he talks about the history of French sex work. I believe he goes into that, and how how struggles and all that kind of stuff like that, the history of sex work and whatnot, and how it pertains to the film. 32-page booklet edited and introduced by Heidi L. Corton of Semo text containing the Red Heels, a newly translated piece about the film by co-writer Hervé Gubert. The Wounded Man is a story by Della Tala, texting on Wounded Man, a conversation between Wayne Kostenbaum and Bruce Heine. New restoration trailer, official trailer. So if you're into these kind of coming-of-age, dark obsession films, The Wounded Man is definitely for you. One from 1983 that I'd put more in a thriller, drama, a psychological, but there is some horror aspects too. Okay, the next one from 1983 is Mountaintop Motel Massacre. That's some alliteration for you there. So this one I had seen years ago under the New World kind of DVD, or New World VHS. I've seen the thing, but I think the first time I would ever see it was on the Anchor Bay DVD. I think Anchor Bay put this DVD out, if I'm not mistaken here. But so I remember this being, the cover art and everything was very memorable. Please do not disturb Evelyn, she already is, or something like that. Great tagline and everything. So yeah, this is kind of a Psycho rehash, more a little bit tamer than you would expect for the time frame. But this started off as a regional horror film from 1983. Jim McCullough Sr. was involved with that. He was involved with The Beast from Black Swamp, the one that Synapse put out. Good Bigfoot flick for sure. But this one here started off as a regional film being made in 81, 82, and it got a limited release in 83, right? And nobody really grabbed it. Nobody picked it up. It was very limited at the time. Then years went down the line. Somebody picks it up a couple years later, distributor. It was New World Pictures. They tacked on a new, more violent ending, a couple more violent scenes, and put this bad boy out in 85, 86, more 86, is from my understanding. But so the original release was 83. We do not have the original release of this one, so Mountaintop Motel Massacre is going to stand in 83. But here's the plot. We have Evelyn, who was just released from a mental hospital, and she runs this motel, and she has kind of a daughter or niece or whatnot who has a rabbit, and she kind of works, a little bit of psychic stuff, premonition stuff, and one day she's out in the garden kind of cutting things, and she kills one of her pets because that varmint is bothering her. She goes in to yell at her daughter or a relative and accidentally kills her in a fit of rage because she's communicating with the dead, communicating with the father that had passed away. So for some odd reason, the cops decide that, Evelyn might have had to be a gardening accident, so they let her go, although she seems to be clearly mentally ill, and she runs her motel until she completely snaps and starts killing the guests. The guests include a newlywed couple ready to get down, a fake music producer that picks up a couple hitchhikers. We have a traveling carpenter. We have a kind of a preacher. So these are kind of the guests here, and of course the sheriff's going to pop in and out, and they start to get picked off, and kind of, meandering kind of pace, I would say. I don't think Mountaintop Motel Massacre is this fast-paced, extremely entertaining slasher or anything like that, but it's decent, and the lead baddie is decent enough. She kind of travels underneath the motels that are basically just these rundown cabins, and I think there's a little bit of sex appeal. I don't remember any explicit nudity, but I think there was a little bit here and there. Overall, Mountaintop Motel Massacre, it's okay. It's decent. Obviously a late cycle slasher before we would get into more of the supernatural oddities and goofy slashers that would come in the more mid and late 80s after Nightmare on Elm Street and its sequels. But it's definitely more of a, I guess you'd say Hitchcockian throwback. It's a psycho riff with added gore to appeal to the slasher fans. I like that it's a regional horror film. Is it Louisiana? I think it is filmed in Louisiana. It's funny that it's a mountaintop, but it is. And I think it has that appeal, that kind of low-budget slasher film. I do prefer the original cover. Now, this was the cover that was drawn by one of the artists that never really got a release here. They thought it was too explicit, but I'm sure the original cover's in there. No, it's not. No original cover from New World? That's kind of a bad call there, Vinegar Syndrome. That's a bad call. But we have some special features on here. Newly scanned or restored 2K from the 35 negative elements. Under the influence, an interview with assistant cameraman David Aiken. And he talks about, the guy he worked under was a great cameraman, worked on the original Roots, unfortunately has passed away. Then we have Mountaintop Motel Memories, an interview with production designer Drew Edward Hunter. He talks about, his career, the people on the set being great and whatnot, and Evelyn, and not really being a big fan of this. I can't remember which one said that, but, he's also the artist who did that cover art. So overall, Mountaintop Motel Massacre is a fair, fine horror movie from 1983 with decent gore, decent kill count. It's technically a massacre because 7 people die. What's a massacre? 5 to 7 or something like that. You'll enjoy it if you like kind of regional low-budget slashers. You could do worse. You could do a lot better, but you could do much worse too. So right in the middle. Okay, the next one here is from William Fruit. That's right, William Fruit, continuing his 80s run. He had one Funeral Home in 80, he had Trapped in 82, and he has more in the 80s, but this one is 83. It's Spasms, a Canadian exploitation flick starring Oliver Reed. I gotta love Oliver Reed. That's the worst Oliver Reed impression ever. But Oliver Reed is second killer snake movie of the 80s, within a couple years of each other. Venom from 81, very good thriller movie with Nicole Williamson and Klaus Kinski, Susan George, great movie. But this one here, he is co-starring with Peter Fonda, who also did Dance with the Dwarfs this year, and Spasms is a much better movie than Dance with the Dwarfs, which is not a particularly good movie. But yeah, so we got Peter Fonda, Oliver Reed, Al Waxman. Who we also have pop up in here? We have this actor, who I can't remember his name, but he's Gold Leader in Star Wars, but he's also Detective Ronson in Hellraiser 2. I recognized him right away. I was like, I didn't know he was in this, but he plays one of these cult guys. So Oliver Reed was a big game hunter, and he was injured by this crazy, supposedly satanic snake that these tribal people, I can't remember exactly where it's from, worship, and every 7 years it comes back and takes souls because, that's just the way it is. So Oliver Reed gets obsessed with capturing the snake, but also some satanic cult is after the snake as well, and they hire Al Waxman from Class of 1984, plays a cop in that. He plays he's a sleazeball in this, really fun sleazeball, to kind of get the snake, infiltrate, and bring it to them. So he's on the tail, and also Peter Fonda is the one who originally ordered, is working with Oliver Reed, and they want the snake sent to a college institute. He's a doctor of sorts, and Peter Fonda doesn't really pass as a doctor when he says it's a poisonous snake at one point. You're like, bro, it's venomous. I don't know. But anyways, so they're all kind of trying to get this snake. At the very beginning, we see kind of this ritual, and it kill a bunch of people, as it is a giant snake. And it does remind me a little bit of the 1981 or 82 horror flick, depending if you ask, Jaws of Satan, which is a killer snake satanic movie with about a bunch of, I think there's one giant killer snake in it as well. And so this one here, and then I think Spasms, I think I prefer Spasms, to be honest, over Jaws of Satan. But they're both kind of probably in the same caliber. But Oliver Reed is pretty solid in it. I love Oliver Reed. We have this actress named Carrie Keane in here, and it's funny because she's from the movie Incubus, and she's got a bigger, about the same role in that one. I can't remember her in the movie, but she's high credited up. I cannot remember she's the main girl or whatnot in it, but I found it very funny when I was doing a little bit of research on this one, that her surname in this movie is Kincaid, and her surname in Incubus is Kincaid. Maybe she's playing a relative of sorts, but yeah, she's good in this. Al Waxman's really funny. Oliver Reed's solid. Peter Fonda's decent. All the acting is decent and fine, and I do like William Fruit. I think he's a slightly underrated horror director. He did Killer Party as well, Blue Monkey, Death Weekend. So he's got a nice little kind of small list of horror films. But so what happens is, of course, they're supposed to bring this snake in. The snake gets out on the campus, and we have some campus killings with the snake, right? It's like 82. Remember, they're like, we got to get a mummy on the college campus torture. It's like, we got to get a killer satanic snake here. It's anything to get some sort of weird animal or killer or monster on a campus in the 80s, right? We got to get those girls naked in the shower, which is what they do. But the funny thing about this one, when the snake bites you, you swell up and you kind of get grossed out and you kind of explode. They show it in kind of detail on the cover here. Right there, it's kind of infamous. It was on the VHS cover, if you've ever seen the Spasms VHS cover, a girl like in black and white naked in a shower, and then that guy on the side like ready to explode. The movie looked real sleazy. It's not that quite sleazy, but it's them to try to stop this killer snake. There's snake vision. Overall, I like Spasms. Is it a great movie? No. Is it a fun, decent, kind of slightly crummy horror movie from the 80s? Absolutely. But as far as killer snake movies go, you could do a lot worse. Could you do better? Could you do worse? I don't. They're all relatively kind of at the same pace, right? It's like, I mean, Curse 2. There's just not that. I just don't know what to say from this time frame. But I enjoy this. There's no real special features on the disc, and in fact, it looks like one of them. There's a missing reel, like the second reel or something like that. So it's like it's an HD, and then all of a sudden it looks like a VHS insert at one part of the movie. A big chunk of the movie, like 15, 20 minutes of it, is like VHS insert. But for the most part, it looks good. Besides that stuff, of course. Overall, I think Spasms is a fun 80s horror flick, and how could I not mention this one? Reed is solid in it. Not his best work, but not his worst work either. Later he'd get in like stuff like Severed Ties, where it's just like he just doesn't seem to give a flying fuck, but maybe it's just a script in general. Some decent special effects. The snake does look hammy and cheesy. It looks a little bit like a giant Aylmer, which works perfect in Brain Damage because he looks cool and he's supposed to be a little goofy. In this one, you're like, that's just kind of a bizarre looking snake. He's much better than the sea serpent from the Osario movie from the 84-85, but probably not that much better. But I like this one. Check it out. It does remind me a little bit of Blue Monkey, his other film, where they're kind of trapped in a hospital with the weird kind of creatures and whatnot. But I would recommend Spasms if you like this sort of thing from Code Red. This Blu-ray's long out of print. I don't know if anyone's going to pick it up because I think there's probably some element issues, and there was a DVD too that's long out of print. So I guess you guys are just going to have to deal with Spasms being streaming somewhere, probably on YouTube or whatnot. But fun movie. Check it out if you can. Okay, the next one from 1983 is The Snake Queen's Wedding. That's right, we're finishing this trilogy. For some reason, I watched part 3. Mountaintop Macabre put part 3 out, and I watched that before too. Forgive me. I think part 1, The Snake Queen, from Indonesia, was actually made, 81 did I watch that for? But this is Siswaro Gunumaputra, who is, I probably say, like the premier Indonesian horror director. He did a slew of them. Some of them are really good, some of them are alright. But this stars Susanna. How could it not? She's in the other ones as well. And I think that The Snake Snake Woman movies get better as they go on. So the first one I was okay with, this one I like, and the third one I like even more. So these are really kind of cool, fun. Obviously, the mythology of the Snake Woman goes throughout the movies. This one opens up, throws you right in here. I was like, I don't remember a lot of this stuff, but it's called The Snake Woman's Wedding. So this is fantasy horror. I'd say fantasy first, but in the very beginning, there's this kind of battle between these two guys that are trying to court the Snake Queen because they want to fight to the death, and the Snake Queen likes this one guy, but if this guy, whoever wins gets to they kind of bring the body of the other one, and then the Snake Queen will marry him. But what happens is this guy she doesn't like, who's a magic user as well, brings the body there, the head of the guy, and the Snake Queen kind of pulls a fast one and says, bring me the body too, or I don't want to, kind of goes back on her word a little bit. But what happens is while he's kind of taking the head, this other woman steals the head, puts it back to the body, is going to somehow put this old god of hers that she worships into his body and make it marry her daughter. Therefore they can get revenge on the Snake Queen and the Snake Queen's master. This is the crazy story here. I used AI subtitles, but you know what? For once they held up. I'm not a big fan of AI, but when it comes to AI subtitles on movies no one's going to care about or do themselves, I think AI works well for that. I don't think AI works well for art or anything of that nature, but AI works pretty damn good for stuff like AI subtitles and whatnot. But so the subtitles actually worked really well this time. So you see where I'm getting at here. So it gets really convoluted and absolutely insane when this guy finds out. He doesn't really find out what's going on, but he ends up kind of working with this woman who stole the head, and they're going to go after the Snake Queen. He feels jaded. What happens is there's some fights, some magic, some weird shit going on, and at one point somebody turns into a crocodile and some glorious, crazy Indonesian weird effects. Think Mystics in Bali when the guy turns, does he turn into a pig or something like that? Not quite as good as that, but pretty damn close. Indonesia does some weird effects, and they feel like dated, but they're also just crazy as shit at times. But there's a lot of fighting and wackiness and some violence, some good stuff. What? I think that the Snake Queen's Wedding is much better in terms of a lot of the Indonesian flicks I've seen. It's fast paced, it's entertaining, there's battles, there's weird shit going on, and of course it has the guy who's in all these movies. He's in the first Warrior film. I can't think of the actor's name. He's in what is the one that not Primitives, but I watched it. He's in I get all these mixed up, but he's this really tall, skinny guy. He's incredibly gaunt. He always plays this kind of wizard style character, and the Warrior, he jumps up in the tree and kind of disappears. But he's in tons of these movies. You'll know exactly who he is when you see him. But he plays kind of an advisor to one of the bad guys, as this magic kind of guy. But overall, I would recommend watching The Snake Queen's Wedding if you can find it with subtitles. It is on YouTube, and they do have AI generated subtitles which you can't translate to English. So enjoy. Also a wild, weird snake movie from 1983, although not the kind of same snake movie. There's a lot less snakes in this than you'd expect. I feel like the first and the third one had a bunch of snakes. It's like, man, there is snakes here, like the snakes attack an army and stuff, but there's a lot of snakes, but it's not snake focused as you think. More snakes. Why doesn't the Snake Queen's Wedding have a wedding with a bunch of snakes? I don't even know if there's a wedding that takes place, really. A lot of talk. But anyways, false advertising. I don't like it. No, but seriously, check it out. It's fun. It's good stuff. Indonesian horror fantasy or fantasy horror. Okay, the Patreon pick here is Meet Joe Black. Somebody got drawn out and they asked, could I switch it because that one had already been done? Sure. And this is actually directed by Martin Brest, I can't say his name. He did Beverly Hills Cop, right? That's the big call to fame. And this is based off of a 1934 movie called Death Takes a Holiday, which is based off a 20s play, Italian play. So, yeah, we're going to go Meet Joe Black. This movie came out. I remember when it came out, my parents watched it. I was a little young to be interested in a 3-hour movie. I just guess I would have checked out immediately. But this has a really good cast, and it's kind of an interesting cast even when you look at it at today's eyes with the actors and stuff. We have Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt, Jeffrey Tambor, Gay Harden. I never say her name right. Who else pops up in this thing? Jake Weber's in here. There's a bunch of other people. I can't think of the lead actress in here. She's good, but she's not an actress I'm super familiar with. But yeah, so we'll start with those people in the film, of course. So this one opens up, and it's this very uneven, strange kind of film here, right? Because it's incredibly sentimental, incredibly emotional, or attempts at emotional, and it has like a fish out of water kind of comedy sense all at the same kind of deal, right? It's definitely trying for that kind of stuff, which I don't know necessarily how I feel about absolutely everything, but so Brad Pitt and, Anthony Hopkins is a man who has everything. He runs a news kind of station, news kind of, empire, but, these bigger guys are trying to buy him out. It's coming to his 65th birthday. He's having voices in his head that says, basically saying time's coming, time's almost up. And he's not sure exactly what's going on. He has 2 beautiful daughters, one of which is married, one of which is dating his number 1 guy, and Jake Weber. So he thinks everything, he's having this big birthday party all planned to all this stuff. Brad Pitt actually sees his daughter at this coffee shop, and they start up a conversation. They seem like they kind of hit it off, and he ends up getting hit by a car out in the parking lot and supposedly dying, right? And nothing's really heard of Brad Pitt after that. So that character, at least for a while now. But one day, somebody shows up to see Anthony Hopkins, and we know who Brad Pitt was earlier, but he doesn't. And he introduces himself as basically Death, and he says, you don't have that much time, and I want to basically take a vacation and learn from you, learn about life through you. It's my chance to take this vacation. I chose you because you've been privileged. You left an incredible life, and you seem like a generally good guy, but you teach very well. So he says you don't really have a choice here, so he has to take Brad Pitt under his wing, and Brad Pitt does some silly things at first when he's learning how to, be human. He's eating peanut butter, and there's some stuff that I don't know if it meshes perfectly correct, but, it is kind of like sweet, but also goofy, and I'm not sure if the comedy really lands. There's not points in the movie where I thought were funny. I think the comedy kind of fails in this movie, to be honest. I don't think it's horrible, but I think it's less, as good as the rest of the film, because at the end of the day, I know that it's not a perfect film. I know it has some messy stuff, but I really did enjoy this one, and it's probably because getting a little bit more sentimental as I get older when it comes to this kind of stuff, I guess. Death and whatnot, and the way they're looking at death and portraying death is very kind of, it feels bigger than, it's not so sardonic or whatnot, I wouldn't say sardonic's not the word. It's not so, cynical. It's not as cynical as so much things I watch, so it does have this kind of little, I guess, rose-tinted glass look at death, even though it can be sad at the same time. So, of course, Brad Pitt's starting to learn and about life and interact with all these people in his life, and this whole kind of big reveal about the news station and kind of shady people kind of unfolds and whatnot, and Brad Pitt starts dating. Death starts dating his daughter, and that causes this turmoil and everything like that, and this big drama piece at the end. And it's all going to kind of come to a head at this birthday party after his 65th birthday party. It's going to be his time to call it quits. Anthony Hopkins is fantastic in the movie. I think he's great. Brad Pitt is good. He's not great, but it's a hard role to play. He's kind of got to do a lot of things, and I think he does okay. Young Brad Pitt, sometimes he's fantastic, sometimes he's okay. Like Interview with a Vampire, I think he's all right. I think that, honestly, for the first time, and I never would say this, Tom Cruise kind of steals that movie from him because he plays a psycho and he does it really fucking well. But Brad Pitt, I think, is a fantastic actor now. I think back then he was learning, and he's good. He's obviously good, but he wasn't the Brad Pitt that you'd see in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or something like that. But I think he played kind of just cool characters a little better back then. Like if you see something like True Romance, just a small role like that, or Thelma and Louise, I thought he did really well in those movies. As that young kind of guy, as that kind of role. This one's a little bit more complicated, not super early in his career, but a complicated, strange role. Like I said, Hopkins does fantastic. The 2 daughters do fantastic as well. But the secret MVP of this movie, Jake Weber's also good. I've seen him in the Dawn of the Dead remake and some other things. He's good in this one. And The Cell, of course. But who steals this fucking movie? Jeffrey Tambor. Fantastic actor. I always remembered him. The first time I saw him would be the Tales of the Crypt episode. What is it? I can't remember the name of that one. Dead Wrong or Dead Weight or something like that. But he's fantastic in that one with Debbie Moore, and he's always great. He's in the Hellboy movies. He's in Arrested Development. Just a fantastic actor. And this one, he's got kind of a Dr. Phil look going on with his mustache, but he plays Anthony Hopkins' son-in-law, and he's just Quince is just a great character, great performance, comical, and his comedy stuff works, but he's also endearing. It's not laugh out loud. This guy, is trying to be funny. He's just a character that is a little quirky, and I think his stuff works really well. Brad Pitt doing the Jamaican stuff is horrible. That's the weakest part of the movie, I think. It's like it wants to be sentimental, and it would be maybe if he wasn't doing the Jamaican accent, but it just doesn't work for me. It's just like, I get it, but no, not for me. But the ending is really touching. And I think it wraps it up really well. I like Hopkins a lot in it. And I think it's just a movie about death that it's not so cynical. And I guess it was the right time, the right place to watch this movie with the rose-tinted glasses and death and everything. And overall, I actually think this one worked pretty well for me, and I was surprised I enjoyed it. And I know my friend Jeremy Freeman messaged me. He was like, he saw I rated it pretty high, and he was like, man, I heard that movie was just a mess behind the scenes and stuff, and he started bringing up stuff. And, I didn't want to hear about it, really, because I enjoyed the movie, and, and maybe in 5 years, maybe if I was 10 years earlier, I'd be cynical and be like, this is so stupid. But, I like all types of movies, and just because something's mainstream or somebody doesn't like it or, has a popular... I don't know how popular this movie is. I know when it came out it was, but I feel like it's probably like shit on now by a lot of people. I just don't care. I like what I like, and maybe I will like it later, maybe I won't like it later, but I'm just giving my honest truth how I felt about the movie. It is 3 hours long, though, and it is too long. I will say that. I think that it could be trimmed, but then they might trim some of the great stuff with Hopkins and his daughters, or Quince, and whatnot. But good stuff. It was interesting to see Hopkins and Brad Pitt act alongside each other as well. But, yeah. Questions, comments, and concerns. Let's do all that jazz. Nick Flanders, 59. Rope remains chilling, doesn't it? Does it not? All the more so because it was inspired by true events back in the day when the subgenre hadn't been done to death, and often done very badly. This film made me nervous about accepting invites to fancy dinner parties. How about you, Dave? I don't get invited to too many fancy dinner parties, right? But if I did, I'd go. And they're not going to kill me. I could try. Unless it's food's poison, then I'll be dead. Good to see Rachel McAdams in a genre feature. Again, it's been since Wes Craven's Red Eye, right? Wow, 20 years gone, just like that. Never got the whole Dylan O'Brien thing, but heck, I've been wrong before. He's really good in Caddo Lake. He's really good in this. Questions. Would you have said no to that apple in the Garden of Eden? How would I know? In reality, if they tell me it's knowledge, I'm going to eat it. I don't know that it's going to complete. It's forbidden. That's all they say is forbidden. I don't know. That's such a I don't fucking know. The answer to that question is insane. Which Hitchcock film do you consider to be the most disturbing? Probably Rope that I've seen. Maybe Psycho. Now that Sam Raimi's back making films with which retired director would you like to see make a triumphant return? I'd like to see Mr. Carpenter at it one last time. I don't know. I don't want to force anybody out of retirement. I don't have an answer for you. Till next week, God willing, if you come across the Necronomicon, don't read it. For it, sir, also don't join the Deadites. Beyond Sour Ground. Speaking of Jean-Claude Van Damme, what's your favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie? I just watched Hard Target for the first time a few days ago and loved it. It's either Hard Target or Bloodsport. I'm a classic, kind of comes to that. I also like Lionheart a lot, but I'm going to go either Bloodsport or Hard Target. I love those two. Also on topic of Hong Kong cinema in general, what titles would you be your highest recommended or most essential Hong Kong horror films? We're doing horror films. You got to see The Boxer's Omen. You got to see Bewitched. You got to see The Beast. You got to see so many, and I'm not an expert in a lot of these. Seventh Curse is a great one. There's tons of them. And if we're talking Cat 3 movies, you got to see Untold Story. You got to see Ebola Syndrome. Those two are must. Untold Story, Ebola Syndrome. But if you want to see some of the ones that were earlier, not a personal favorite, but a good one, is Dr. Lamb. I would really recommend Untold Story and Ebola Syndrome in the horror films. If you're going back classic, got to see Boxer's Omen. Got to see Bewitched. I think you should see Black Magic movies 1 and 2, especially Part 2. I thought was great. But there's so many of them. And The Beast I really like. Lost Souls. Men Behind the Sun is another one if you got the balls. But there's a lot of them. A lot of good stuff going on there. But if I had to do like 3, I would just go Untold Story, Ebola Syndrome, Boxer's Omen. That's a good start. And Seventh Curse. Got to go Seventh Curse. And then we have, while I'm extremely well-versed in 80s horror, classic horror, Euro horror, Asian horror has always been a blind spot for me, but it's been great over the past few years seeing more of these films finally coming out in the U.S. on physical media. So I've been trying to delve deeper into the Hong Kong stuff. With Hong Kong action films, it seems like everyone starts off watching guys like Bruce Lee or Chow Yun-Fat, and then you work your way deeper into the genre from there. Whereas the Hong Kong horror stuff seems to be all over the place, if that makes sense. Yes, I understand what you're saying. If you want something extreme, they're all pretty extreme that I've named, to be honest. But Seventh Curse, if you want a crazy, fun action horror film. If you want something real crazy and nasty, go on Toad Story, Ebola Syndrome. If you want something absolutely batshit crazy and kind of gross, Boxer's Omen and Bewitched. And then we have, I also think Corpse Mania, if you want like a Giallo-style one, is really particularly good. And Human Lanterns. Go with those two are great too. 10 Bizarro Room 55. Big fan of your channel since the long hair early days. Your voice and presence in collecting has been nostalgic light on YouTube. I appreciate that. Martin Cinema. Those post-apocalyptic Blu-rays from Blue Underground look ugly. They didn't have the good process at the time. Fake grain. I hope they do a new scan at one at a time. I agree. You know what? I didn't mention that, but I didn't remember 1990 Bronx Warriors looking that bad when I watched it last year, but I do particularly remember putting Escape from the Bronx. I'm like, this kind of looks really soft and kind of shitty. It's not up. I figured there's probably element issues, but I didn't think of that. That was an early Blue Underground one. Maybe they just weren't up to snuff, because now their stuff is gorgeous and one of the best in the business, but hell, right, you're right about that. Mike Moore, I love all those old Italian post-apocalyptic films, just good cheesy 80s fun. I agree. Also, just rewatched Vigilante last week. Really solid flick. Yeah, Vigilante's great. Underrated score by Jay Chataway. Sauhine. Christ, by the way, there was a whole big deal about the fans of the two Bronx Warriors trying to search for trash, Mark Gregory, because he was in all those 80s action movies, then abandoned acting. To be fair, he probably jumped ship right at the right time, just before the 90s TV wrecked the entire Italian film industry. I don't remember exactly when, but somewhere in the 2020s it was confirmed that he had passed all the way back in 2013. So big RIP to Mark Gregory. Indeed. I think I did mention that. Yeah, they had that documentary on him, trying to find him and whatnot, and they released it before he passed away. Unfortunate. He continues, if you ever get a chance, the Mystery Science Theater 3K episode with Escape from the Bronx, or the alternate title they used, Escape 2000 is gold. I thought Escape 2000 was Turkey Shoot. Maybe I'm wrong. The violence and gore may be butchered to shit for TV, but that one is still good time, even if it's so much fun on its own. Good memories of that one. Liked it a little more than a Bronx Warriors. I still think it's nuts you waited so long to see it, but glad you did. Yeah, we all have blind spots, and I'm no different from anyone else. Stephen Blank, Mark Gregory was allegedly discovered in a gym in Italy and almost immediately put in Bronx Warriors. As a fan, I'm glad we have Adam and Eve. He still has international fans, and it's very tragic how his story ended. I'm also happy to have decent copies of Thunders 1 through 3. I know somebody put those out, right? I was wondering where I could grab those. Frank's Comic Castle. Got New Barbarians a few days ago. Also got the DVD version. Such a fun movie. I also got 2019 After the Fall of New York from 88 Films. Yeah, the Sergio Martino movie. Also a fun one. I'll be watching that for 83. I did an interview with Eugenio Ercolani about a month ago. So much fun and great guy. I'll have to get him on the show. I'll have to check out your interview as well. Way up, dude. You the man. Thank you. Ken Coakley. I love the Bronx movies because of Mark Gregory. He looked like a metalhead like me. In the first film, I almost died laughing when the gang that I like to call the Course Gang came out ready to rumble. In Escape from the Bronx, trashing an uneasy alliance with Antonio Sabato, his son. His son, Antonio Sabato Jr., looks exactly like him. I got a kick out of the Dublon laughing after saying a Spanish word. Now, this is going back almost a month. After watching a review of King Kong documentary, I bought it. Fandingo at home. It had very interesting on it. One particular was Dana Gould, who produced The Simpsons as well as being a stand-up comic, who does a great impersonation of Don Knotts as Pontius Pilate. Okay. Gould and I share some memories as we both Boston natives who identify as monster kids. He talked about seeing the Del Toro version of his movies. His wife turned to him and asked if Kong survived at the end. That story reminded me of when my cousin's best friend was furious over Leo dying in Romeo and Juliet. Long live the King goes well with my other documentaries. As for Mean Streets, I love their use of Tell Me and Jumpin' Jack Flash during the first scene in the strip joint. I also like the grindhouse scenes. When they rip off Riverdale kids, their plan is to go to the movies to see The Searchers. Great stuff. The cast was amazing. Harvey Keitel and De Niro, as well as David Proval as Tony the strip joint owner, who went on to do The Sopranos, along with Richard Romanus as Michael the Loan Shark. He did some voiceover work as Harry Canyon, the probable inspiration for Bruce Willis in The Fifth Element. Richard Romulus' brother, Robert Romulus, who played Daytone, the ticket scalper in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. George Mameloni, who played the rotund pool hall owner. I remember that from Phantom of Paradise's Swan Slacky Philbin. Yeah, he's great in that. I didn't even register that was him. He was supposed to be in Taxi Driver as the guy spying on his wife. He got sick and Scorsese had to do the scene, but Momoldi ended up in Rocky, of course. Robert Carradine shot his brother David in the men's room. I couldn't believe that two guys were afraid of gunfire when the guy in the back seat gave him an upset stomach from laughing so hard. Cesar DeNova played Keitel's uncle. He starred with Elvis in Viva Las Vegas. Victor Argo, who played one of the mobbed-up guys, was also a convenience store owner and taxi driver. He's also Simon/Peter in The Last Temptation of Christ, as well as is in King of New York and True Romance. A great actor. The Funeral. Harry Northam, who played the soldier coming home, was also in Taxi Driver. My favorite movie that Northam was in was the 1979 film, Over the Edge, which was Matt Dillon's first movie. Lastly, forgive me, I meant Revenge of the Dead is Zetter's other name. I watched it again 10 years ago, couldn't get into it. I had a t-shirt of Revenge of the Dead that I had during Walking Dead Mania. People liked the design, but that was its flaw. Like Pearl Harbor, they didn't deliver the goods. The issue with Revenge of the Dead is it's advertised as a zombie film, but it's not. It's not a zombie film. It has zombies not in the traditional sense in it, but it's advertised as a zombie film, so it always disappoints its audience. I think it's a great movie. I think that if people can get over it and reevaluate it, I think they would enjoy it as well. That's just where I stand. Let's get into this update, guys. All right, let's get into this update. First up is a 4K update upgrade to Dead Zone. Looks like the slipcover got scuffed in transit a little bit. I guess I'm just going to have to deal with it. But classic movie, 1983, David Cronenberg, starring Christopher Walken, Herbert Law, Martin Sheen, Brooke Adams. Great movie. Look forward to watching it in 4K. Written, of course, by Stephen King. And then we have Turbulence. Great sale on this one on Amazon. Ray Liotta, Lauren Holly. This one I have not seen since it came out. Me and my family watched this one together, and I remember it being a pretty damn good thriller on a plane. And then we have Fire in the Sky. Got a good deal on this one. Scream Factory. Groove had this on sale. Free shipping. So I have not seen this movie in a lot of years. So I was like, yeah, I got to definitely check this one out. I believe it was a TV, or maybe it seemed like a TV movie. I'm not 100% sure, but very terrifying alien abduction film. Then we have some stuff coming from Hong Kong. Yeah, that's right. Some Hong Kong Blu-rays here. The Trail by Ronnie Yu, 1983 Hong Kong horror flick. I think an adventure style thing starring Kent Chang. Can't wait to watch this. Very excited for that. And this one is the Esprit D'amour. This is another one from 83. It looks more fantasy than horror, but definitely picking this up. We got Fortune Star Blu-rays here, so I love this. Grabbing these. Good price on them. Shipping was expensive, but the price, they kind of made up for pretty good price overall. We have Hocus Pocus here, 1984, Hong Kong. Kind of comedy, horror thing going on here. This guy from, I think, Mr. Vampire. Isn't it the same actor as in like all those movies? And then we have Vampire's Breakfast with Kent Chang again. This looks like a lot of fun. Late 80s one here. All these are probably going to get released anyways in America by like 88 or something. But hey, it is what it is. Then we have Spiritual Love. Looks more like another fantasy, romance, horror kind of thing. Comedy, most likely, which a lot of these are. But we got Chow Yun Fat there. We got to place another order eventually as well. And then we have a fantasy romance. This one looked less horror than the other ones, but still looked damn cool. Love that cover art there. Yeah, I'm into this stuff, so, and willing to check these out. And last but certainly not least, we got The Haunted Cop Shop. There's a sequel to this one as well, but I've not seen this one. But yeah, that is the update. Let's get back to the video. Also, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.